So first, I want to thank you for being in attendance today for the presentation. We'll be sending the presentation out via email after to those who are attending. And we also have added it to the website, so you'll be able to refresh whenever you need. All right, so these are the topics we're going to be covering today. They range from alcohol and drug use to hazing, sexual misconduct, all the way to some stuff about COVID-19. All right, so we'll start with Clay's bill, which is also known as the House Bill 2639. Now, this was in effect in 2007 after Clay Warren, a student at Texas Tech, tragically passed away in a car accident when he was coming home from a fraternity event in 2002. So this came into effect because of that accident. And the bill made it mandatory for risk management education to be presented to all student organizations, requiring that officers and advisors attend the training and requiring that it is reported what members attend. So your membership will be getting that information as well, and that's a requirement based on this bill. Okay, and I just wanted to read this to you. So this quote is by Representative John Smithy. The goal is to make sure that everyone on campus knows there are some guidelines to follow before planning activities such as parties and trips, and just as important, to discourage hazing, boozing, and other illegal activities. Obviously, this happens more so on larger campuses, so at universities, but this is a bill that's in effect for all colleges alike. All right, so next we're going to talk a little bit about the risk management policies. So this is the policy that was given line. It's VID 105 that we're going to be covering. So it's a very important aspect of being in a registered student organization. So risk management requires that this information helps with the planning and organizing of events on campus. It is also the RSO's responsibility to consider any potential risk management risks with all meetings, events, and travel to ensure the safety and well-being of the students. And like I mentioned, this is VID 105, which is part of the risk management policies on the website for LSC. And it talks about how RSOs are required to attend risk management training, which is what you're doing right now. Note that it does state that the representatives and officers will provide an overview of the contents from this training at the next full membership meeting. So we do know that you guys are working on boosting your membership back up after COVID and with students graduating. However, you will still need to present this at your next full membership meeting. Now, what that means to you is up to your discretion as a club, whatever that full membership meeting date would be. But when you do host that meeting and go through the overview of this presentation, please email me the date that you presented the information to your members so that I can send this information to system office because they use this information. It's required of us to submit that to them. So risk management, as we'll discuss, is the process of considering potential risks to students and the college when planning events, monitoring the RSO's activities, and taking steps to minimize risk factors in any way possible. And these are the types of risks that we do identify through risk management. They are physical, reputation or reputational, emotional, financial, and then facilities. So first, we're going to discuss alcohol and drugs as a topic. Now, over time, I'm sure we've all heard the different statistics involved with drugs and alcohol. Over 1,825 students between the ages of 19 to 24 die annually from alcohol-related injuries, and around 67,367 drug overdose deaths occurred in the United States in 2018. So these are really high numbers. Obviously, the drug overdose deaths don't break it down between 19 and 24, but these are just a few statistics about why alcohol and illegal drugs is a big deal, especially with college students. Okay, so there are major effects from drug and alcohol abuse, and one of the risks is that you have a higher chance of developing an addiction, which can result in a drug overdose, whether it's accidental or intentional. So what we consider to be high risk drinking is also an issue, and it includes underage drinking, drinking and driving, and other similar activities to that. When you mix medications and health conditions while drinking, so if you are on a medication that you're not supposed to be drinking with, that would be considered a high risk drinking, as well as if you have a health condition where you're not supposed to be drinking. And then binge drinking, which is another high risk drinking situation. For men, that is 5 drinks concurrently, and for women, it's 4 drinks concurrently. Now, I really like this image because it shows a standard drink and how different alcohol stacks up against each other. So as you can see from this picture, as the percentage of alcohol in the drink is higher, the volume of the liquid gets lower. So you start with 12 fluid ounces of regular beer, which is about 5% alcohol, and then you go all the way to only 1.5 fluid ounces of a shot, which is 40% alcohol. So you're going down in the volume of the drink, but up in the amount of alcohol content. So it's important to be aware of this when you're drinking, especially because we don't want you mixing percentages that can create a risk for you. And along with that, when you think about it, there's other seltzers and other new popular drinks that have varying different alcohol contents. So it's just important to be aware of the amount of ounces you're drinking compared to that percentage of alcohol when you pick up a drink. And this is the Lone Star College alcohol policy. So it talks about how LSC strives to provide an alcohol and drug-free workplace and learning environment. It's also important to note that no group or individual will be permitted to serve or bring alcoholic beverages in or upon the LSC facilities, which includes any RSO events, whether they're on campus or off. So in other words, we are a dry campus, and any violation of being a dry campus can result in disciplinary actions. Just to summarize that for you. Now, providing alcohol to minors is a Class A misdemeanor, so that is punishable by up to $4,000 fine and also jail time. This can affect your future, as well as a minor's future employment in certain careers. So it's best to not provide alcohol to minors. Now, DUIs and DWIs. So Texas has a 0 tolerance law for minors driving with any alcohol in their system. So if they have any little bit of alcohol in their system, there's different consequences listed here for minors driving under the influence. But in addition, any person driving while intoxicated in a public place will result in jail confinement. And there's different sections if you're just intoxicated or if you're found intoxicated with an open container. Now, in 2011, Texas passed the 911 Lifeline Law, which states that if a person is under 21 but calls 911 for someone who has alcohol poisoning as a way to save their life, that they will not be charged for possessing and or consuming alcohol. It's important to note that this only applies to the first person that calls for medical assistance, and the caller must remain at the scene and cooperate with EMS and law enforcement in order for them to not be charged. So if there's 5 people under 21 and 1 person is experiencing symptoms of alcohol poisoning, the first person under 21 that calls 911 basically is waived of the charges that they might have if they cooperate with EMS and law enforcement and stay at the scene, because they want to make sure that they can save someone's life over getting someone in trouble for calling. So that's just important to note. So here are some common signs and symptoms of alcohol overdose poisoning. Take a look at these symptoms so that you can detect if someone you know is exhibiting any of them. And this is just a short list of common symptoms. If someone in your presence is overdosing on alcohol, the first thing you'll want to do is immediately call 911. But in addition, any of these longer procedures listed out will help while waiting for medical personnel to arrive. But it's important to note that you want to make sure that you are not putting your own safety at risk when performing any of these procedures. And this I wanted to go over is a procedure that can be life-saving. It's known as the bacchus maneuver. And basically it's got 4 steps. So if someone you know is possibly having symptoms of alcohol poisoning, what you'll do is you'll raise the arm that's closest to you above their head in preparation of rolling them towards you. Gently roll them towards you, guarding their head from hitting the floor, and the head will rest in front of the arm, but not on it. You'll tilt the head up to maintain airway. Tuck the nearest hand under their cheek to help maintain head tilts and raise the face off the floor, and you'll be able to check on them often. This is used so that way someone who is experiencing alcohol poisoning is not going to choke on their own vomit, which is a leading cause of death for those that are suffering from alcohol poisoning if they're left unattended. So this is just an important maneuver to know. And preventing alcohol overdose or poisoning, obviously the biggest way to prevent alcohol overdose and poisoning would be to not consume alcohol. However, taking any of the steps below will help to decrease the likelihood of an overdose or poisoning for yourself or those you love. And these can include knowing your limits, avoiding mixing alcohol, so mixing different alcoholic beverages, and using a designated driver while you're drinking. Drug use and abuse can affect a person in many different ways, whether they're physical, emotional, and especially financial and reputational. Please note that it is illegal to use, manufacture, own, sell, and or distribute any substances as known in the Texas Health and Safety Code. Okay, so controlled substances, and drug possession under Texas law. So controlled dangerous substances include heroin, cocaine, meth, marijuana, manufactured narcotics, steroids, depressants, and stimulants. The possession of these can range in penalties from a misdemeanor to a severe felony, charges, and this is based on determining factors that are highlighted down here on the slide, including quantity, how the drug was concealed or stored, possession of the drug with other paraphernalia, drugs found with a large amount of money, or past convictions and offenses. And to go over some common signs and symptoms of drug overdose, these are listed on the slide. There's a lot more listed on this slide, but it's important that you know these so that you're able to detect if someone you know is exhibiting any of these symptoms. Now, what to do if you overdose on drugs or if someone you know overdoses on drugs, you'll want to immediately call 911, same with for alcohol overdose or poisoning. In addition, any of the procedures on this screen will also help while you're waiting for medical personnel to arrive. And again, make sure that you are not putting your own safety at risk performing any of these procedures. And along with the alcohol overdose prevention, not using drugs is obviously the best way to prevent an overdose, but taking any of the steps below will help to decrease the likelihood of an overdose for yourself or those you love. These will include increasing your awareness, so even going through this presentation is one way of increasing your awareness, avoiding multiple substance use, and seeking treatment. Okay, next we'll discuss hazing. So hazing is a ritual that involves risk, pain, or harm to gain some form of initiation, which can involve alcohol consumption or ritualized pain endurance. Hazing has led to deaths on college campuses, which has led to anti-hazing laws in the United States. And I think for most people, you'll be able to correlate hazing to larger campuses, mainly with fraternities and sororities. However, hazing can occur on any campus, big or small. So this slide just discusses a little bit more in detail what the term hazing includes. So to kind of summarize what's here, It can include physical brutality and any physical activities that provide risks to mental or physical health or the safety of the student or person that is being hazed. Now, as of this past spring of 2020, a report will be published on the LSC website that identifies any hazing incidents against an organization registered or recognized by the college. So the public report will contain information about who committed the hazing and who it was against, when it occurred, the date of investigation, what violations were involved, and any criminal charges filed, including findings and sanctions imposed on the organization. So I thought this was important to show because this is something that has just come to light on our website as of this past spring. So you'll be able to see that report on the website now. Okay, and these are the hazing policy definitions from the LSC Policy Handbook. Hazing, as defined in the policies, is any intentional, knowing, or reckless act against a student that endangers their mental health, physical health, or safety. An RSO cannot require such acts for membership, whether on or off the college's property, and all reports of hazing are treated as serious matters and should be reported to Student Life immediately. Now, to continue with that, personal hazing offenses occur when a person engages in hazing or helps others to engage in hazing. So that would be if a officer of a club engages in hazing, or if a member helps an officer to engage in hazing. Organizational hazing offenses occur when an organization condones or encourages hazing or assists in hazing. So that would be if your RSO is condoning hazing activities for members that want to join. And here is a continuation of the laws that regard the prosecution of an offense. This just states that the court may grant immunity from prosecution for the offense to those subpoenaed to testify for the prosecution and who does testify for the prosecution. Now, reporting hazing. To report hazing, please submit a written report to the Student Life office. This is a continuation of the laws down here as well, including the statement that a person consenting to a hazing activity is not a defense to prosecution. As we know, hazing is never tolerated, whether it is consensual or not, so it is important to report that to the Student Life office as soon as it occurs, or as soon as you know anything about it. Next, we're going to talk about a similar subject, which is sexual misconduct, abuse, and harassment. This is the LSC policies that relate to misconduct. So the college covers the material in IXA11. And it's important to know that the college does not tolerate sexual misconduct or retaliation against anyone who complains about sexual misconduct. Now, some of the terms of sexual misconduct are listed here on this slide. The first is sexual harassment, which includes hostile work environment and quid pro quo sexual harassment. Hostile work environment harassment is including verbal, physical, or visual forms of harassment that are sexual in nature, unwelcome, and creates a hostile work environment for the individual. Then the second one is quid pro quo, which refers to a form of harassment where a person of power stipulates that a greater performance will be based on whether the person submits to unwelcome sexual conduct. So an example of a hostile work environment would be if an officer is being harassed by another officer when they're trying to perform their duties. So it's a hostile work environment in that case. And then quid pro quo, a good example would be if an officer is withholding membership without getting something in return, some sort of sexual conduct in return for letting a member join a club. And here we have some definitions of terms for sexual misconduct. So sexual assault is one of those, and that includes rape, fondling, incest, or statutory rape. Sexual discrimination includes any discrimination on the basis of sex. And sexual violence is any physical sexual act without a person's consent. Now, consent is a voluntary and positive agreement between those engaging in sexual activity. Stalking includes any repeated or unwanted attention, harassment, or conduct where a person fears for their safety or the safety of others. And then Title IX harassment includes sexual harassment, sexual discrimination, and sexual violence. To see a bigger full section on sexual misconduct, you can go to the link provided on this slide, and that'll talk a little bit more about the LSC policies regarding that. Okay, so the next part is when confronted with sexual misconduct. First, you'll report to the police, submit firsthand written documentation. You'll want to seek a network of support and professional counseling if you need it. Utilize campus resources or advocates, and then implement protective or restraining orders if necessary. Now, this slide is very important because it lists all the internal and external resources for sexual misconduct complaints or events that occur. So you guys, like I said, are going to get a copy of this presentation. So this information will be good to have on hand. This has information for the LSC Police Department, our Office of Emergency Management, Karen Miner's information, who is our Title IX coordinator, and then all of the external resources such as Family Time Crisis Counseling Center, Montgomery County Women's Shelter, and then Tri-County MHMR services, stuff like that. So these are good sources, should I say, for information if you need. So next, we're going to move on to discussing fire safety, weapons, and other campus safety information. So here are some safety tips. So for fire safety, always have a plan. A fire alarm equals evacuate the building immediately. Whether that is a fire alarm for a drill, it doesn't matter. You're going to need to evacuate the building immediately. Help others if necessary or possible, and have a meeting place. Usually that's given by your instructor or someone on campus. Call in the exact location of the fire if you know it, and then if you haven't already, sign up for the LSC text and email alerts, which will give you alerts for fires or other safety-related issues such as lockdowns, severe weather alerts, stuff like that. So here we discuss a little bit about LSC policies as it relates to the definition of prohibited weapons. For the full definition, obviously these are abbreviated. Please see the link that takes you to the website at the top, the VIE 102. This is just a list of prohibited weapons, and like I said, they're just abbreviated, and there'll be more full definitions of each of these on the website. Now, regarding campus carry, Lone Star College has designated certain rules and regulations regarding gun-free zones, and the designation of these zones can only be approved by the chancellor. As of 2017, an LTC holder may carry their firearm into campus buildings unless it is an exclusion zone, which will be clearly marked. So I'm sure some of you have seen it before on campus that certain buildings are gun-free zones. So if you are an LTC holder, that means you cannot carry your weapon in that building. Okay, and this is a little bit more in case of other emergencies. So there's posters displayed all around campus about the information below for what to do in those emergencies. It's important to review the information regarding these scenarios, especially after the scenario that occurred last spring with our lockdown on campus. I feel that a lot of us were not prepared for something like that, so going over this information is vital. It's also important to save the phone number for campus police that's listed below into your mobile device. So if you need that phone number, you'll get it from this slide, but it's 281-290-5911. And if you're on a campus phone, you just dial 5911 and it'll immediately take you to the LSC police. Okay, so next we're going to talk about issues and accommodations for disabilities. So Section 504 prohibits the discrimination against people with disabilities and works with ADA and IDEA to protect children and adults with disabilities from exclusion or unequal treatment. Student organizations do not discriminate against persons with disabilities. All are welcome to participate. If you or any students you know do need any accommodations to participate in RSO activities, please refer them to the Disability Services Office. So in this case, if you have a student who is visually impaired or hearing impaired or mobily impaired, and it's going to be an issue for them to attend your event, and you want to be able to give them the same opportunity to attend that event, you can talk to Disability Services and they can provide you with information about how to make it more accessible for others to attend your meetings or events. So here is the LSC policy, which directly relates to the rights for students with disabilities. The college believes in equal access to educational opportunities and has committed to making reasonable accommodations for qualified individuals with disabilities. And here's another part of the policy. So students are responsible for identifying themselves as individuals requesting accommodations for a qualified disability. Leanne is our disability services counselor at the Kingwood campus. So if you or a student you know needs accommodations, her contact information is listed on this slide as well. And her office is, when we're on campus, I should say, is located in the Career Services office. So right inside the Career Services office, her office is located in there. So next, we're going to briefly touch on student travel policies and procedures. As we've mentioned in our RSO town hall this summer, that there's going to be no traveling for the fall and spring semesters for RSOs or anybody on campus really. But we will want you guys to have this information if you are traveling in the future for any events. Okay, so this displays a little bit about non-academic travel. So travel can include an organization participating in conventions, workshops, athletic events or competitions, and non-athletic events and competitions. So modes of transportation may vary from airplanes, college-owned or leased cars or vans, commercially owned and operated buses or vans, or personal vehicles. Any travel that requires paperwork must meet the following conditions. So we've also kind of talked about those conditions in previous travel workshops I've had on campus. There's a little discrepancy with that first one being at least farther than 25 miles from the closest LSC campus. However, we usually just say that if you're traveling anywhere off campus for an event of some sort of travel, you'll have to do some form of paperwork. Maybe it's part of the travel paperwork, maybe it's the full thing. But student life may require travel paperwork even for shorter trips. And then the list of documents on this slide includes what must be submitted to the Office of Student Life for travel. Again, it might be less of this paperwork. It just depends on the type of travel. But you can find the forms on the website at the link on this slide for our RSO resources page. And this will give more information as to those documents, where to find them, how to download them, etc. And occasionally, students will use student-owned vehicles for travel. So if you're going to an event off campus and you're all traveling separately to that event, this is the case where the list below applies, and you can read this at your own pace when you get the slide sent to you as well. Other times, though, the college will provide transportation to you. So in those instances, a driver that transports students must be a college employee that is approved. They must have a valid driver's license and have a satisfactory driving record. And then there's a list of driver responsibilities listed on this slide as well. So in summary, you can view the student travel policy on the website, but it is important to remember that planning ahead is the key when it comes to student travel. If you ever have any questions, though, about travel, please reach out to myself or another full-time student life staff member, and we can further assist you. Okay, next we're going to briefly touch on RSO events. So when hosting events that will require any use of funds, please make sure to complete the RSO fund request form. This is probably familiar to you if you've ever submitted it in this past semesters. But I did combine, there was two forms, the RSO fund request form, and then there was a promotional product request form. I've combined them both so you would do those on one instead. But if there are any events you're hosting that require any little use of funds, whether it be $10 or $100, you'll be submitting that for approval to Student Life. And please plan ahead for all events because we want to be able to provide you with the supplies you need in a timely manner. All LSC policies for student organization events do apply whether you hold them on or off campus, so just note that as well. And it is important to consider all potential risks and work to minimize them for all participating in an event. And I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing about the coronavirus, but I do want to touch on it briefly for everybody since it is of the times now. So these are some common symptoms. As we know, it can be a wide range of mild to severe symptoms in anybody, and someone could be exhibiting something that's not even on this list. But these are like the most known symptoms from the CDC, so I just want to let you guys know. And symptoms may appear within 2 to 14 days after exposure, so you might not even know you have any of the symptoms until later on, but it is important to know that these are the most common symptoms that people are facing. So what to do if you're sick? So if you're sick with COVID-19, here are some steps to follow. Obviously, the biggest prevention tip is to stay home or to wear a mask if you're around others, but there's also important tips about washing your hands, avoiding sharing household items, with others, staying in a specific room, stuff like that. And prevention, the best way to prevent is also to stay home, wear a mask, cover coughs and sneezes, stay 6 feet apart from people if you are in public, disinfecting frequently touched surfaces. All of these you're pretty familiar with, but I just wanted to cover them one more time for you guys. All right, does anybody have any questions? You can provide them in the chat below, and I'll be able to answer them if you have any. I know it's a lot to cover, and like I said, we are sending this presentation out right after this concludes, so you guys will have all of this information, and it's on the website if you ever do lose that information. Okay, I don't see any questions so far, but if you do have questions, like I said, still put them in the chat. The next task for you guys is that now that you've completed this presentation, you'll go ahead and do the risk management training quiz. It's 12 questions which cover the material that you've already gone through in this presentation. It must be completed by tomorrow. Like I said, it's super quick. If you want to do it real quick after you finish this, it'd be easier. That way it's fresh in your mind. And this needs to be completed before any of your RSOs can use any funding for the year. I will add this link real quick for you guys to the chat box. Oop, I did not mean to move that. And that way you guys can get this information right away. But if you guys don't have any additional questions, here is my contact information on this slide. Oh, sorry. I did it wrong again. Technology, we're all still learning it. So here's my contact information if you do have any questions. I'm more available via email, but you're welcome to call that number. It goes right to my email if you leave a voicemail anyways. But I'm very responsive throughout the week. I work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, so I will be able to respond to any questions you have then. Otherwise, I'll be sending this out right after we conclude. And if you guys don't have any questions, I hope you guys have a great day, and I appreciate you guys joining us for this presentation. Have a great day, guys.